We're going to have an interesting panel discussion on the golden strategies for TOTEX planning. Um, the panelists and the moderators today will discuss the key resource planning choices across enrollment, deduplication, and credential issuance that can significantly reduce long-term costs and operational overheads when designed thoughtfully from the outset. Before we go on to the session, I have some housekeeping announcements for you. You will find on the screen now, these are your Wi-Fi credentials in the green box. And for anybody who wants a live translation, this is your QR code to log in to Wordly. And this will have both a live transcript of the translation as well as an audio. For the audio, we request you to kindly use your own earphones or any other devices that you use for audio. A few general announcements. Please keep your phones on silent so that we don't disturb the speakers or the sessions. Restrooms are just outside to your left. And if you need any other support, there are people, me and a few others from the MOSIP team, and we're very happy to help you. Can I now invite our moderator for this session, Sanjith Sundaram, to please come up and introduce the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Suratmika. Hello, everyone. Coffee, anyone? Just after lunch? I didn't get it. So, Anurag, I just heard that, the coffee is over. So, probably after this session, and we'll try to make the session interesting for all of us. I'm personally very excited about this particular topic, right? Who want to save some millions? A few millions? Billions? No one? Okay, so when you want to really optimize the cost of an ID system, you should know where you are spending your money and what you are doing with your money, right? So this is a slide, a 2018 slide from World Bank. I don't know how many of you have seen this. Pretty old one, but I would say it's still relevant for our conversation, right? What it does is, it has divided the ID system into 6 cost categories. The first one is human resources. Second is ID credential. Third one is enrollment infrastructure, central IT infrastructure, physical establishments, and IEC. Now, each of these cost categories is further divided into country characteristics and program design choices and impact level. For example, population has got a very high impact on your cost. Density of your telecom connectivity, that has got a great impact or a high impact on your overall cost. At the same time, reliable levels of electricity, probably a lesser impact. Ant will be speaking about some strategies around that, how the impact can be reduced. And when you also go to the program design choices, there are a few items that are of high impact. Choice of biometrics, enrollment timelines, choice of credential medium. At the same time, data security, privacy, we all know that it's very important and critical, but probably that's a moderate impact on the cost itself. Now, the next slide is very important, right? So the same document we articulated in some way. What are the key pillars or key cost categories contributing to the ID system? What you see here in the screen, based on the 2018 report, I know there is some update that is needed. 90% of the cost is contributed by these 6 names that you see here. And again, human resources, it varies from 35% to 65%. We are not really talking about human resources here. That's highly contextual. We may not be able to talk too much on that for now. The second one is ID credential. The variation is 10% to 40% towards the overall cost. Central IT infrastructure, that is where the deduplication components are coming in. ABIS systems are part of that. It's from 6 to 15%. And if you see the enrollment IT infrastructure, that's where your enrollment kits are also part of, and that varies from 5 to 20. Now, when I say the variation, what does it mean? That means there is a scope to strategize around them, right? If you strategize well, you can keep it at 10%. If you strategize well, you can keep it at 5%. So in today's session, I was just fooling you by giving that heading, golden strategies. There is no golden strategy, I was just kidding, right? It's about learning from the past. What did we learn from the past? What did we learn from similar deployments across the globe? And how can we strategize it better so that you have maximum savings in terms of millions or billions? I'm not taking the numbers, but yes, that's the objective, right? With that, let me welcome my fellow speakers. Aunt Langu, the CEO of BioRecord, a long-time partner of MOSIP, who has been very instrumental in success stories across the globe when it comes to biometric enrollment kits. Please, on the stage. And we have Antonello. There is a nickname that I call him, but I'm not sharing that name here. So Antonello is the Business Development Director from Neurotechnology, one of the pioneers in the deduplication and biometric processing capabilities. And he'll be speaking about the deduplication strategies. And Mr. Anshul, my dear friend from MicroSave Consulting, to speak more about the credential strategy. I think my responsibility is over, right? And I think it's time for me to hand it over to the fellow speakers here. Anji, over to you.
Welcome. I just wanted to share some thoughts about the investment into enrollment equipment and other equipment you need for the enrollment of the people. We often see in tenders, when we speak to end customers, when we speak to our partners, a few things. A, we see the MOSIP recommendations, which are great, which focus around the quality, but they are not the book of law. Even Sanjith and the MOSIP team will admit that they haven't thought about every single use case, and yet you can derive from it, as long as the quality is given. We see very often that when it comes to enrollment, everybody is talking about the enrollment kits. So we have a country, we have 12 million people. So with 12 million people, we need that many kits, or vendors love that. We have that budget, we think the kit costs that much, so we can buy so many kits. Both might not be the optimal solutions if you want to save money. You need to see how many people you want to enroll, and there are some formulas. For the choice of this presentation, I've taken some very basic calculations that how you can enroll people. And one of the aspects is also and I've had 2 or 3 discussions just in the last year, in some part of our country, we don't have power grid. So we need all the kits to have solar panels. No, because in most countries, you have a part of the country that is very well connected to the grid, where you never will need a solar panel to run the kits or the enrollments, and you have a small part of the country or a larger part of the country where that is not the case. And if you differentiate there, you can already save money. A kit with a solar panel is nothing else but a kit without solar panel plus a solar panel. I take, just as an example, if you take a desktop equipment for enrollment, you are in the major cities, and I'll come back to that slide later on, you will be able to fill that office with a lot more enrollment station than when you put a big kit on the table. It takes more space, it's inconvenient for the operator, and you will see later on that the city enrollment are a very important part of a MOSIP initiative. I created the country of Armenia by averaging the African countries minus the first 8 in the Human Development Index and gave it some artificial shape. I'm happy to share in a white paper how I got to these numbers and what the thought process was behind it. And Armenia has a population of 29 million people. I need new glasses. And a land distribution of 519 square kilometers. The population has grid access is 48%, energy poverty is in 52% of the country. But we have one megacity and 3 major cities in the country where a lot of the population is already, or a lot of the population lives. And starting from that, I ran some calculations. And going back to we need a kit to enroll everyone. If you make an approach saying, okay, we want to enroll the population over a period of 3 years, which is reasonable, and you can set up offices in the cities where the people can really queue up and one after the other can enroll. You will be able to enroll these cities first with very limited equipment. I took here the number of 45 people that you can enroll on a kit on an enrollment station per day, which is a low number. Just to remind you, Atar had a threshold of 80 people a day. In these cities, you will be able to, with just 500-something enrollment station, to enroll the population of these cities in the first year. Then you can already distribute that equipment, the desktop equipment that goes into government offices, into other government offices. You can create enrollment stations in these cities where people can go to, hey, I turned 16, I now need to enroll for my MOSIP ID number. And you have these cities covered. Starting from there, you start rolling, with the urban enrollment, you already have 40% of your population in the register. And then we start the grunt work, as I call it, in year 2 and 3 to go out into the most remote and rural places. And there you need enrollment kits. But instead of an initial calculation that I had of 3,000 enrollment kits to enroll the whole country, you're suddenly down to 1,276 that will allow you to do the enrollment in the country. And moving forward, this is a fair amount of kits to have in reserve to establish enrollment station for the future enrollments of the people that go 16 and older or 14 and older, whatever you plan in your country. You can establish them at critical points, and you still have sufficient kits to every once in a while send someone around the rural places to make sure that everybody gets enrolled. So by just taking the average, or not the average, by taking the infrastructure, the specifics of your country into account, you dramatically reduce the cost of equipment, the cost, the money you will spend of this equipment. And you have, within 3 years, you have a complete enrollment. Going back, you now see how much sense it makes to say, okay, we are not using kits everywhere, but we have fixed stations on one hand and mobile kits only where we need them. It's a bit more work for the tender, but it's a big cost saver for the country. And I promised Sanjith below 10 minutes. Here I am. And Antonello, now that the hardware part is over, he can tell you what to do with the data.
Thank you, Ad. Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to speak today about usage of biometric deduplication in identity system and how we can optimize its usage and which are the main criteria to follow in the design of such system. So first of all, what is deduplication? Deduplication is the process of avoiding duplicate identities in the identity system through the usage of biometric traits. In order to understand how we can optimize the cost, I think we need, first of all, to understand which is the value of the deduplication, that is substantially avoiding duplicates, and so avoiding to have additional cost in issuing an additional identity and additional credentials for the same person. The typical example is, for example, when we can give two social security cards to the same person, so the same person could have access 2 times to the same type of benefit. And this is something that we want to avoid. This is an additional cost for the community, and this is where there is the value of the biometric deduplication. Also, we need to understand that biometrics has different accuracy depending from the modalities and depending by the number of instances that we use. That means that face biometric, for example, has different accuracy than fingerprints, and when we use 1 fingerprint, we get a different accuracy than when we use 10 fingerprints. So the higher is the quantity of biometrics that we are using in the duplication, the lower is the possibility that a duplicate is missed in the system. Typically, the criteria from where we start to design the biometrics that we need to the system is, first of all, the population size. But when we look at the population size, we should look in advance and not look only what we have today, but what we can have like in the future. So it's true that from one side we want to save, but from the other side we should prevent that save too much today will become an issue tomorrow, meaning, for example, that we start to enroll only 2 prints, and later on we realize that for a certain size of the population we could need 10 fingerprints. Also, of course, we should look at the average quality of the biometrics for the population where we are operating. We should look at the demographic characteristics. If, for example, we look at including the full population, or, for example, only a part of the population, like could be the case of a voting card, for example. And also, which are the cost alternatives to biometrics. So if we are eliminating the usage of certain biometrics, and some people using only, for example, fingerprints cannot be enrolled, we should also understand which are the costs of the alternative methods for including people who needs to be included in the system. And of course, there are intrinsic limitations of certain biometric modalities, like the face, that could not work well for twins. So typically what we would recommend nowadays when really we want to optimize the system for a national ID program is to start by the fingerprint modality. We as a company see fingerprints and prints working very well with test data. We recently even got 0 error in the NIST FRIF test for the Class B on 3 million data. Also, we see that fingerprints works very well nowadays, at least for children between the age of 5 and 10. In a period of 5 and 10 years, they can, with enough accuracy, got verified again. We recently have run like a program launched by WIDI for the BO challenge. But still, when we speak about operational data, not about test data that are running in a true system, we could have like more complex situation. And that means, for example, the case when we could have anomalies when fingerprints for different people get mixed in the same enrollment session. And for that, we need to have, in addition to the automatic process of the duplication, we need to have a manual process of adjudication. And that means, from the cost perspective, also that we should have operators that are trained and that are able to perform this manual adjudication process. And because, for example, if we use only fingerprint, this manual adjudication process could be expensive to train and even expensive sometimes to solve manually. We should think, for example, if it could be more convenient still to use the face in the process of the duplication, to include some biometric trait that would make for the operator the process of adjudication simpler. And of course, depending by the number of cases that are going to adjudication, the number of operators increase, and so the cost increase. So from this perspective, it's important, again, to understand that for the same modality, different algorithm vendors provide different accuracy, and bigger accuracy means lower number of operators. At the same time, bigger speed means lower number of hardware resources to perform the automatic deduplication process. As well as, of course, in addition to the algorithm, the ABIS system and the capability to be configured to balance the speed and accuracy is important to find the optimal tuning for the system. Another important part from this perspective, especially when we speak about the hardware, is that nowadays many national ID programs are not launched from the zero. There could be like a legacy database that needs to be migrated in the new system before to put the new system in the production. And what does it mean is that if those data are a lot and the algorithm is slow, there could be a number of additional hardware that could be necessary to perform this initial deduplication. So ideally what we want to do here is to be able to reuse the same hardware that later on will be in production in the migration phase to perform the deduplication of the existing data. This is in an ideal world. In the practical world, there is also a political cost in launching the project in time. I have seen at least 2 projects in the last year where the migration part of existing data was not possible to be launched in time, and where the migration of existing data needs to happen in parallel to the enrollment of the new people. So from this perspective, it's also important that the ABIS software, in addition to the algorithm, provide in the adjudication parts tools to solve this complex case. And finally, regarding the part of the migration of new data and regarding in general the process of the duplication, nowadays is present in the market technology for capture fingerprints on the personal mobile device. Of course, this technology is not the same as using the regular scanner for the one-to-one. It works very good for the one-to-one, but still we see some promise for the one-to-one in working like in a smaller scale. And we think that such technology can be used at least to reduce in advance, in the pre-enrollment stage, the number of candidates of the person that is going to be identified, so that later on, during the normal enrollment process, eventually the fingerprints that are later on captured with the regular fingerprint scanner could address only this subset, reducing so even the hardware that it's used for enrollment and the number of servers that are required to perform the identification at large scale.
Great. So I think in a room mostly filled of technology champions, I think my job is a bit different, is to bring the perspective how government and countries see credentials, because of course technology choices are important in terms of cost, accuracy, deduplication modalities, registration kits. But how, when countries comes to these decisions and when they have to serve their residents, their citizens, and think about ID, how that view looks like from the other side of the table. So with that, I think this is nothing new. So I think from a government or country's perspective, ID is just not a technology system. It's not about having just an IBIS system or otherwise. For them, it's about giving a credential to their citizen or resident. It's not about just proving an ID with someone having its existence, but how to prove that existence. And from a country's perspective, from credentials, they have 3 very basic choices. As we have know, the physical credentials, which is the most, I would say, running from the anthropological times, where we have the paper-based IDs, any form of paper-based credential. We have a more electronic, or what I could call a combination of physical plus digital. I think that we have seen for the past 20 years, mostly in practice, where the chip-based card, NFC. And the third, as we are also now progressing very fast, is towards a digital-based credential where you do not need any physical ID in any form. So these are the 3 broad choices, broadly, which countries or governments face when they talk about it. Different countries have different journeys. We'll see that how we also that why they are taking that journey as we move forward. So if we talk about what are the choices that countries have when it comes to different credentials, if I talk about physical, it's about the physical card that we see. In many parts of the world, they do not have a physical card because the governments do not have a lot of money to print these cards. So there we have the acknowledgement slip, the letters, which again works perfectly legally, a recognized document by the government of that country. We have a wide range of choices when it comes to the electronic or a combination of physical plus digital. I think the most common that we have seen in this continent and across many other parts of the world is the electronic chip-based ID card. Then we have the NFC card, which is also going. Then we have what we have seen in India's example also, and Ethiopia's as well, that you have a physical card or a letter with a QR code. Now, all of these three modalities looks similar but works very differently in terms of technology, architecture, and choices. The last is a barcode, and of course the SIM-based mobile ID as well. So for chip-based card, as we all know, that we need a chip card reader that has a huge cost implications on its own. For the government, if they have to assign a chip card reader, and I think what we were learning from the first presentation, that they have to have that chip card reader across various locations, whether it is a bank, whether it's a government office, a post office, in city, in rural part of the world, because if you do not have that chip reader along at that physically present, that the ID verification authentication cannot happen. And for any government, that becomes a major cost constraint. That who is going to purchase my chip card readers? Am I going to ask the banks or the relying parties to buy these chip card readers? Or am I going to buy these chip card readers? If I am issuing a chip-based ID card or an NFC-based card, who is going to take the cost of that card? If the citizen is allowing to pay the cost of the card, what happens if somebody lost the card? So when we comes to the look at the numbers, for Sanjith, you were mentioning about the millions and billions. This is where you comes to the savings, essentially at a country scale. If I'm talking about a population of 20 million, 30 million, now imagine the cost of printing a electronic chip-based card for 30 million by the government from its own pocket that is running pretty much on debt from various reasons, and the people who are cannot afford that card, that comes very expensive. So that's one. Digital, as we have also seen, is we do not need mostly other than an ID number. It could be an app, and I think this is one thing that we see from a country's perspective very frequently, that they often get confused between what do I mean by the ID app versus what do I mean by wallet, which is also NG. From ID authorities' perspective, they think that, okay, if I have an ID app, I also have the wallet, which is not the case. An ID app could also be used just for having the basic information and could also be used to scan the QR code feature. It may not have the wallet which can store your credentials, what we also call as verifiable credential. Again, both of them has a bit of a different cost calculus, again from a scalability perspective that we'll see, and then of course the digital certificate, and lastly XML, which is not very used in today's time. So from a government point of view, I think this is a wide range of options that they look when they think about, okay, how do I'm going to implement or operationalize my ID system once I have my enrollment and deduplication figured out. And different countries, as we see, will take a different choice depending on where they are. So if I talk about the three broad categories or journeys that countries have taken over the past many years that we see, the first category is the digital first leapfrogger. So the countries which have decided, okay, from a paper-based system, we are going to have a completely digital ID-based system. India and Ethiopia are two prime examples of the same. I think the CEO UIDI was also here in the morning, also sharing some of the views on the same. India took a very journey for a very different reason. As you all know, that we come from a country of very small population of 1.4 plus billion. And you can imagine that if a small country like us have to issue a chip-based ID card for, again, a small population of 1.4 billion, how the cost would look like. If I just comply, take a scalability of $3 per card, it wouldn't be $5 billion just for printing the cards only. And now imagine how many chip card readers the India has to take. I mean, we have around 500,000 villages. So you need at least one there. Then you have multiple banks, post office, and whatnot. Again, multiplied by the cost. I think you will figure out a number. I think the economics is very clear. So I think and also a large part of India also is very detail related. We'll see why some of these countries in the next slide. So for many countries with such large population, this is the type of cost constraint that force them to think out of the box and perhaps take a very different journey from where that we are from paper-based, we go completely digital. The second one, which we see the most common, is from electronic card to a digital ID system. So from paper we went to electronic, then to digital. And the reason was very simple actually. So in many parts of the world, especially in this part of the world, the connectivity was a major challenge. So if you do not have an internet connectivity, how are you going to authenticate? So you are dependent on the chip-based card and the chip card reader, but then comes at a huge offset of scalability and the cost. And again, there are a lot of examples, both from Asia and Africa, who have taken their journey. Singapore is one, Thailand is one, then Tanzania, Nigeria is also one. And the third is where I think we are not seeing a lot of action, is again from the physical or electronic credential. There are a lot many countries even today who wants to go digital, but I do not have a clear pathway. And I think one also, I think the last slide that we also seen from the last presentation, that for them, the easiest way that they think is, okay, I have an electronic card, now I can convert that card into an app. Now, and so then what's the problem could be? So this is the problem, that even if I can convert my current electronic card into a wallet or a digital format, how much internet penetration I really have in the country. If my internet penetration is less than 30%, 40%, how useful my wallet is going to be. If my digital literacy is less than 40%, 30%, how many people are going to use that wallet? So from a country or from a government point of view, technology, of course, is is an important factor to consider. But if I do not have connectivity, if I have a very low digital literacy, can I really go digital in a single go? Or the correct question would be, if digital only is the right approach. So in many of those contexts where countries are suffering with low digital literacy, low connectivity, low smartphone ownership, they have to have physical plus digital options, which is why I was showing the slide number 2, that when a country look at credentials, they look at a wide range of options so that the person, individual living in the remotest part of my jurisdiction can have access to those verification facilities. Budget is also a huge constraint. For example, I can have a fantastic ID system, but if I do not have budget for expanding the ICT infrastructure, the connectivity infrastructure, then what I will really do with that ID? I think that's another one. And the last and also extremely important is, okay, I have a fantastic ABIS, I have a fantastic enrollment, 90% plus, but what am I using my ID for? If I do not have a very strong ecosystem engagement to drive the use cases and the adoption of ID, what I am spending my billions of dollars on, I can take $300 million loan from various institutions, but is my money worth it? My money is not worth it if the credentials I am issuing, the ABIS I am using, if the kits I am using is again not getting used by the end users. I think that's another factor that a lot of these countries take, and which is why there's no one-size-fits-all approach. And then lastly, I just wanted to leave this very quickly on the new form of credential that we're also seeing, which looks like a midway for various countries, which is a verifiable credential, which ING, of course, is also driving a lot in many parts of the world. I just want to touch base on what UIDAI has done very recently. So just last month, UIDAI launched its new modality called Aadhaar verifiable credential. What it really does is a more decentralized way or identification. It allows to you to store your credential in your mobile app and then share it with other relying parties on a selective disclosure basis. So this is another model perhaps where, and why a lot of ID authorities are considering, because doing online authentication, biometric authentication, having those kits is not always feasible. And when you are talking about countries which has a population of 200, 300 million plus, I think having those devices every part of the country is not feasible. With countries which are now moving up faster towards digital literacy, these options are also perhaps make sense and actually can give a very personalized and trusted form of data sharing as well based on ID. So this is the last conversation that I want to have on ID. And as I said that from a government point of view, they are far different considerations. So yeah, let's think about them as well. Yeah, thank you, Sanjith.
Thank you, Anshul, and other fellow speakers, Antonello and Arndt, for a wonderful session. So we have time for probably 2 questions from the audience. Anyone? Coffee, anyone? Okay, I think that's what is missing now. So any questions from the audience? Yeah, Shweta, please go ahead.
Very much. All the presentations were excellent. I was curious about what Neurotechnology had presented before. And do you also operate, I mean, does your ABIS work on encrypted biometrics as well? And how does the migration happen? When the migration happens, let's say from one service provider to another, what are some of the challenges around templates and standards and a few other things? If you could discuss that a little bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, so regarding the encryption, we definitely support HSM for what concerns the encryption of the data, but clearly typically in the ABIS, the format that it's used is a proprietary one. It's not like a standard one, because the standard one typically gets used for the template data for the verification, and even for we don't have a standard template definition for face or for iris. It's only for the fingerprint, so even in this case the encryption loses a little bit of sense, but still we support HSM for the decryption of the data once they are loaded in the RAM. And about the second question about the migration, typically what is necessary to have is the access to the original biometric image for the migration, as well as, of course, the demographic data, because nowadays all biometric are based on neural networks substantially, so on AI, and it's worth to have the latest version of the algorithm in order to have like a proper deduplication. I was showing in my slide the fact that now even with test data of NIST, we can even reach 0 error with 3 million database, and this of course refers to the latest version of the algorithm. So I think this is a fundamental prerequisite to have access to the biometric data and the demographic data, but typically it's the case when there is a legacy system.
Thank you. We can take one more question from the audience.
Yeah. Question regarding the enrollment kit. So how do you see the future of the enrollment kit now that we are talking more and more about facial recognition and using smartphones and digital solution for facial?
I think the simple answer is currently the best quality in enrollment you can get is still using a traditional enrollment kit. For the face biometrics, yeah, it's becoming more and more accurate, but if you want to do a large-scale deduplication, you still need other modalities, as Antonello said. And the more biometric information you can enroll, the better your system gets. Once thought that is not very comfortable, but we had when UID started was to say, okay, do we need, when we have iris and when we have face, could it be sufficient? Every country can have natural disasters, and you need to identify the people. And the only option you have then is the fingerprints. So if you think out of the box or out of the normal use case, there will still be fingerprint biometrics, and the highest quality enrollment is still currently, there might be days when this changes, but the current 442 technology, taking the flat fingerprints is the best.
Thank you so much to our speakers, and thank you so much for listening to this session just after lunch. Thank you so much.